So yeah, we're going to hit up essentially this 2021 induction Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominees list, which McFarline and I
Yeah.
last week were looking at. And we saw a lot of impressive picks over here, and we're going to go through this and pick 5 of our own votes that we're going to do for this
Yeah.
because apparently you can like vote for the inductees yourself. And we encourage you guys to do the same. I mean, I know the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame isn't the coolest thing in the in the world, like in terms of its like cultural influence and everything. But I'm sure a lot of the artists involved at the end of the day are happy to have an award if they can get it. And it is an institution, a long running institution, whether you as like a Zoomer take it seriously or not. And they do have some interesting picks this year, regardless. So I thought we would go over the nominees before we actually go into those who we've kind of chosen ourselves. And I do like the background there. It's cleaner. It's nicer and cleaner. I appreciate that. All right, so cast your ballot, official fan vote of 2021. Let's go over some of the mentions here, and we'll go over whether or not us ourselves are leaning any way, one or the other. To kick it off with the first one listed here, Shaka Khan. Shaka Khan, anybody who stirs up anything for you, or did she land anywhere near your list essentially?
No, with this list, I knew I was going to show my age a little bit. I knew I was going
Yeah,
to show
I think everybody's
how
going to
young
show
I
their
am.
age with whatever list, and
Yeah.
I mean, and not for reasons of age, but Shaka Khan didn't necessarily land near my list either, though I do find her to be an interesting cultural figure. And Carole King, did Carole King land anywhere near the list either?
No,
No.
not for me. I think I went in a very like not tunnel vision direction, but straight to the point
Okay, well,
direction.
moving on next then. What about Fela Kuti?
Nope, didn't
Fela
make the
Kuti
list.
did almost land on my list just because of how incredible a figure in the field of Afrobeat that he is. And, even though he's not technically a rock artist, his history in the genre and African music in general, and his revolutionary and daring spirit, I think like certainly makes him like almost in a way, not even just rock, but almost like punk by proxy. And I highly recommend to anybody who is unfamiliar with his work to check out records like Expensive Shit. When I did narrow it down to 5, Fela Kuti was incredibly close. And, again, anybody who's not, including him, I would I would encourage you to look at his work. So Foo Fighters, first like
Okay.
true blue modern post grunge, like undeniable rock band that you could have on the list here.
Yeah.
Where did they land for you, if anywhere?
Honestly, Foo Fighters was the first place I went to. I went straight to Foo Fighters when I seen
Mm.
their name because growing up, that was really my introduction to music like that in general. Now, like hearing drums and guitars and just all these different vocals being put together that way was my first introduction to that. I remember playing Guitar
Mm.
Hero and loving all the Foo Fighters songs. And I used to play with my controller because I didn't have the guitar. But I remember also playing a Foo Fighters song and this other song by Pearl Jam, Even Flow. And I just like the Foo Fighters and Pearl Jam was just the start for me just going down, a more alternative path, just different music. Because in my household, I was really the only one listening to this stuff. And I just remember being really memorized by that music when I first heard it. So yeah, Foo Fighters was my
Foo
first pick.
Fighters, I think, is probably going to be like a pick for a lot of people. If there's like one shoe in for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year, it's probably Foo
Yeah.
Fighters. I mean, I can't deny that they're like a cultural force in terms of like rock and everything, and that they're one of the truest rock bands and the sense and the spirit of the genre on the list. But I know that Dave Grohl is already in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame via Nirvana. He would just be going in there
Yeah.
twice. um, I didn't end up picking them because I took like a very
Yeah.
kind of personal approach with a lot of my picks.
Same.
But anybody like going for Foo Fighters, I don't begrudge you that choice because they're such like
Yeah,
a clear and obvious like nominee. All
yeah.
right, following them up, the Go Go's did they land anywhere near your list?
You know, it made me take a pause because I went really, like you said, I took a personal note with it, and I put some nostalgia into it. And I remember having some connection with their music, but not nothing that is just like, I can't, it doesn't bring me back to a particular time. So no, nothing from the
I don't really have
Go-Go's.
anything strong in terms of feelings on their stuff either. But what about Iron Maiden?
No, no, I didn't even think twice about
No, didn't
Iron
even think
Maiden.
twice about Iron Maiden.
I didn't.
Iron Maiden, out of all of the people listed so far, they were the first pick I said yes to. Iron Maiden was the first
Yeah,
pick that I said yes to. Not only because like they have such an incredible catalog, but when you think of like heavy metal by definition,
yeah,
and not even like just like the old sort of like stuff that really kind of formed the genre, like Sabbath. When you're talking about like the late '70s, '80s, kind of leather, horns up, like that kind of archetype. Like Iron Maiden is
yeah,
sort of like that band that's kind of leading the charge on that. And then,
yeah,
flanked with them, you have Judas Priest and other, new wave of British heavy metal bands. But like, Iron Maiden to me was just like the most obvious pick in terms of like their incredible discography, immense talent, and just like culturally what, they mean to rock and metal in general. I mean, obviously, like they have a lot of mainstream play in the same way that Foo Fighters does. But if you subtract hypothetically like Iron Maiden from the history of rock, like you're erasing the existence and potential of like so many other important and amazing metal and rock bands to come past that point. Iron Maiden to me is just like such a keystone in the genre.
yeah,
And I just kind of had to pick them.
yeah,
So then going on from there, we have one of the first big peculiar choices of the list that made so many headlines over the past week, and that's Jay-Z as a nominee in the Rock
yeah,
and Roll Hall of Fame. Now,
yeah,
obviously, Jay-Z is not the first nominee or inductee into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that is just a hip hop artist. You know what I mean? But there's certainly like obviously reasons for expanding, who gets nominated and why, and talking about rock music is almost like more of an ethos than just, oh, it has to be guitars and drums and shit. And
yeah,
and
yeah.
whether or not like Jay-Z embodies that, I think is like definitely a conversation worth having. Did he land in or anywhere near your list?
Yeah, and to what you're speaking about, if he embodies that, I
Mm-hmm.
think he does. Because from what I heard and hear of growing up, being a part of rock and roll, or just it's almost like a persona. You put on this character, you're so boastful, you're braggadocious, and I think he has done a lot of that throughout his career. And I think also to make an album like 444, to kind of sit back, self-reflect, and just have so many different dualities throughout his career is what makes him, a rock star. To be able to make music with his wife in such a luxurious way, like so many different ways in which he rolled out his artwork and just himself, I think just puts him, I think he should be higher with these votes, honestly, because he is so influential in so many different ways. And you give Jay-Z any challenge, you give him anything, he'll do what he can to make it, his thing. So I think Jay-Z, in every sense of the word, is a rock star and deserves to be in here
Yeah,
for
and
sure.
in a way, like with that Rick Rubin beat that he did off of the Black album,
Hmm.
he for a moment almost like brought that rock riff sound back into hip hop beats where for a long time it was like completely gone. It was like not a
Yeah,
popular thing to be doing.
yeah,
And then to like bring Rick Rubin back out of the shadows, who, was like famous for bringing those sounds together in the 80s when he was like working with the Beastie Boys or, any other band that wanted to just be doing their thing over these blaring rock guitars,
yeah,
was a kind of a smart move that I think like over time has just become legendary.
yeah,
Jay-Z, he didn't land on my list, but he landed very close to my list. You know, if like we had
Yeah.
expanded this to like one more, he probably would have like been on my list.
Yeah,
And you know, I have no
definitely.
like doubt that sort of like, you know, at least in his soul as an artist, like there's definitely like a rock star kind of attitude to, you know, like what
Yeah,
he
for
does.
sure.
You know, he landed very close, and you know, I considered him for quite a while for sure.
And what was the album? I can't remember the
Lincoln
band. It
Park.
was like that remix.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I
Yeah,
know. I know.
and that's
So
another thing.
that I
Like, what
mean,
artist of his level sort of like did that kind of crossover for an entire record, and it like remained this
yeah.
giant album, this giant cultural force for such a long time?
And really bridge the gap for a lot of
For sure.
different people. You know, I remember being in the car with one of my friends and he threw this on and I like knew about it. I heard about it before, but I never understood it. So being able to sit with him and be like, wait a second, this is Jay-Z right now and Linkin Park. Wow. You know, I think when you are able to do something like that, you transcend music in a lot of
No, I
different
agree.
ways.
All right. Following that, Mary J. Blige, one of the biggest names
Mary
in
J.
R and
Blige.
B. Did she land anywhere near or on your list?
Yeah, she was
Okay.
on my list
Hmm.
for sure because nostalgia. Again, I remember just growing up, she was on the radio constantly. My mom had her CDs. I'm hearing just again and again everywhere I went, like Mary J. Blige was just there in front of me. Even now today with, you know, certain artists remixing stuff and just, you know, different DJs and mixes that I hear, she's just always been a staple, honestly. Just
Yeah, I mean,
simple as that.
with this list and with any list, I think there's always room for like whatever your personal choice is going to be. Like thinking about Mary J. and her music and how much I've enjoyed it over the years and how much it's just sort of like been there in an omnipresent way because of just like all the hits, all the cultural influence. Like I definitely
Yeah.
have like a lot of nostalgia, you know, for her stuff, but simultaneously it's like, you know, like, do I think that, that her music embodies that kind of ethos? I
Yeah,
don't necessarily
definitely.
feel that way, which is why she didn't land on my list, but like, I feel like it's a respectable nomination. What about, LL Cool J? Did he land, on your list?
So I was having trouble with my
Mhm.
fifth one, and I looked into LL Cool J a little bit, and I was like, you know, this is a safe way to go, just because I know his influence just reigns over in a very
Mhm.
unique way, and to be able to cross over into, you know, music and acting, and just being this person that people look to for almost guidance, because it seemed like he came into everything at a young age and was able to manipulate it to just really be
Mhm.
fun, you know, and make some really classic songs that, you know, I could just spit off the top of my head right now. So I think it was tough to really pick a fifth one, but I'm happy that I went with him. And like you said, again, his music may not, and I could be wrong now that I'm thinking about it again, but his music may not, you know, be rock and roll per se. But I really think that outside of the music, you got to consider how these people are aging and how their music holds up today and their influence and how it comes through in a lot of artists that we listen
Mhm.
to now.
No, LL Cool J is definitely like when you look back into the golden age of hip hop, like a huge cultural force with, you know, Mama Said Knock You Out and like I Need Love,
Yeah.
and his ability with tracks like that to cross over like outside of hip hop, you know, because like what you need to consider is like when hip hop was starting out, it wasn't something that culturally was as accepted as it is today. I mean, I remember as a kid,
Definitely.
you know, just the general sentiment being like, it's not even really music because nobody's playing instruments, da da da, this, that, and the other thing. But you know, LL Cool J was one of the rare, you know, instances of his decade, of his generation, where he actually did have pop crossover. He actually did have pop appeal, and he didn't need to do it being, you know, a white artist like Vanilla Ice. While you know,
Yeah.
at that time, like, you know, he was almost in a way like the Elvis of the genre because, like, you know, of course, white people could look at that and be like, oh yeah, this is, I could get down with this.
Yeah.
You know, LL Cool J was that for his generation, and then you know, going to the next generation, you know, and what was coming in the next decade with hardcore hip hop and gangster rap, that was NWA, that was Biggie, you know, with Juicy, and you know, these huge like much hookier, you know, like approaches to the genre. LL Cool J is most certainly like you know, influential in that way. He is a cultural force. He definitely has like, you know, a badass attitude about his classic works. I would say he didn't land on my list, but he landed close. He landed near my list.
Yeah.
So following him, Kate Bush. Did Kate Bush land anywhere near your list? Do you have any sort of feelings for her
Kate
stuff?
Bush. No, I didn't even know Kate Bush was on this list. I'm not
Okay,
gonna lie.
don't lie.
I looked
Don't
at
lie
it.
to me. That's fine. I mean, Kate Bush is on my list. I put Kate Bush on my list.
Yeah.
Just because of, you know, obviously her incredible significance to the art pop and art rock genre, and the way in her early stuff she incorporated a lot of elements of progressive rock, and just how massively influential she's been to pop, rock, and hip hop artists across the board. Even though she doesn't strictly make, you know, rock music, her music is certainly like been super influential to artists in the genre for years and years and years. You know, there's certainly like a boldness, you know, a daringness about, you know, her music and her artistic approach that made her sort of a shoo-in for me personally. So,
Yeah.
all right. So next, Tina Turner. Did she land anywhere near your list?
So I was thinking about it. I really was, and I ultimately, in the end, went with LL Cool J. But I think here again, I'm showing my age because I don't have any I just know people talking about her, and you know, in a lot of different mediums. But then I also remember them saying like she was just like this. Whatever she was doing at the time, she ruled it. She did it with the best of her ability, and everybody loved it. So I mean, no. But I know she got the juice.
I'll
And the
say,
sauce.
for me personally, Tina did make my list. Tina was on my list in a heartbeat. I think one of the faster picks for the list for me personally, not only because of her just size as a cultural force, but you know, over the course of her career, if you read her life story, she had been through fucking hell, like more hell than most have ever been through in the music industry. I feel like few people had persevered in the way that Tina did across her career, and, you know, dominated not just in music, but in, you know, movies, like you said, anything that she did. And, you know, what a lot of people also don't necessarily recognize is the massive amount of influence she's had on a lot of rock artists over the years, you know, since her, you know, splash on the music scene, even collaborating and crossing over with guys like Frank Zappa on numerous occasions. So, you know, Tina Turner's, again, like size as a cultural force and her undeniable ties to rock music. Cool dude, big cool. Thank you. Throughout her career, I think kind of make her like personally a shoo-in for me. It's like, you know, even though she's not, you know, up there in the same way that like, you know, AC/DC is with the, you know, and, you know, sort of like, you know, playing, rock up in that sort of way. I feel like she has so many connections to the genre and just so much like significance and so much guts, you know, that anybody in you know, rock music should be envious, you know, of the fact that she kind of made it through what she made it through and built the career that she did. So she, you know, was definitely a pick for my list. Next, Rage Against the Machine. Did Rage Against the Machine land on or anywhere near your list?
No, but I'm interested to hear what you have to say because you talked about it briefly.
Rage Against the Machine most definitely landed on my list. You know, I think almost for some of the same reasons that, you know, you talk about Jay-Z and Linkin Park, you know, culturally, like the fact that they blended metal and hip hop and also radical politics in a way that, you know, only they were at the time that they were together. And since they had, you know, broken up, nobody really has successfully. You know, nobody sounded like Rage at the time that they were there. Nobody has sounded like Rage since. And sure, there's a lot of other rap metal bands that you could point to, but, you know, usually a lot of what those bands following did, I mean, they had maybe a fraction of the musical talent. Their attitude was based in just purely machismo and not like, a revolutionary spirit or an anger at the world, or, just sort of like a will to, I guess, point out the ugliness or hypocrisy of the world. Ramoff, thank you very much, which, a lot of rock music is famous for doing. And, Rage Against the Machine's influences is still, as Mr. Supa says, still felt to this day, I would say. Whether that be through the incredible drums and bass lines, whether that be through Tom Morello's like groundbreaking playing and performances on those records, or, Zach De La Rocha as just an incredible performer and vocalist. I mean, at the time that Rage was doing what they did and gained the mainstream acclaim that they did, it's pretty funny. I mean, I think, you and a lot of people your age or younger are pretty like, used to the idea of like screaming in music. And, and Rage Against the Machine was like far from the first band to like scream on their tracks. But like, they just had like this reputation for being like the angriest band. I believe there's like this line off like Eminem's debut record where he's like, I'm on stage screaming like I'm Rage Against the Machine, because like that's the perception that everybody had of like that band. And like, what is it like to be angry in music? What is it like to be screaming in your music? Like nobody, like on that front, a lot of people just had the perception that nobody's going harder than Rage Against the Machine is, you know what I mean? And that's the other thing. It's like, like they sound exactly like what their name says, you know what I mean? I feel like there are a few bands that sound exactly like their name in the way that Rage did. And, for that reason and many others, they landed on my list. And I would say, we're totally a shoo-in. Following them, we had Dionne Warwick on the nominee list. Did she land anywhere in your list?
No, not at all. I didn't even think about it.
Yeah,
really.
I mean, I do like her work and I respect her as a vocalist, and I love the kind of resurgence that she's had online as of late. But when I think her music, kind of a rock type of spirit isn't necessarily like where my mind goes. But I think it's like certainly a fun thought experiment to like, have her nominated here and have her like at least be a part of the discussion for sure.
Yeah.
Following her, we have Devo. Did they land anywhere on your list?
Again, I thought about it, but then I was like, I really only know like one song by
Yeah.
Devo, and like I barely even remember that song. But
honestly, that's most people.
So, I'm sure people who have voted for them and will vote for them have like a good reason for it, but not me.
Well, personally, Devo most definitely made my list. They I would say was probably my fifth pick. I was kind of like, going between them, going between New York Dolls, going between Jay-Z and Fela, and I'm like, who's my fifth? And I was like, my fifth pick's gonna like purely just be whatever my favorite out of this bunch is, and I just went with Devo. Just personally,
Devo, yeah.
I'm a big fan of new wave. I'm a big fan of post-punk music. I'm a big fan of like synth punk music and experimental music. And I feel like out of all of the picks here, like Devo just embodies that the most. They have such an incredible catalog. They're really a band of musicians, even though there are a lot of people generally that may only know a few of their songs. People who like are hardcore musicians and really like pay attention to their shit, are aware of them very intimately, and, know about Devo. And, also, you have to consider and take into account like how inventive and groundbreaking their whole persona was, which you only really get a sense of when you read into the band. But, the fact that they're hitting the stage in these weird costumes with the hats and the jumpsuits. And there's this whole like concept of being like, from a future dystopia time and that sort of thing, and that was just like really weird for the time that, they were doing what they were doing. And, just all of the, I guess, significance of frontman Mark Mothersbaugh as, past the point of Devo as a composer and a soundtrack, composer. I don't know if, you're aware of this, but, or a lot of people watching, but Mark Mothersbaugh did the Rugrats theme and did
Wait, what?
yeah,
That's so cool.
did like all or a bunch of the music for like the original Rugrats series, and he's done music for other programs and stuff like that. But just like one of the most creative bands out there, sonically, instrumentally, and also just conceptually, in my view.
Yeah.
And I just feel like they embody a lot of, just some of the core tenets of rock music. So, they were kind of a shoe-in on my list.
That makes
So
sense.
moving on from there, next we only have a couple more. Todd Rundgren, was he anywhere on your stuff?
Not even. I'm not even gonna lie to you. You would have to tell me who that
I mean,
is.
he's a very formidable and talented and classic singer-songwriter, and has, numerous classic records under his belt. And I definitely respect the guy and his craft for sure. I could see him very easily being a pick for a lot of people on this thing, and for very good reason. I wouldn't like begrudge anybody their Todd Rundgren pick. He's not personally like a favorite of mine or anything, but I feel like he's one of the more sensible picks here. I'd say if you're strictly going by like, the most direct perception of rock that you can, like, Todd's kind of an easy choice. And I would say that's also like, kind of the case for the New York Dolls next. They're kind of the last pick. I mean, if you're not familiar with their stuff, speaking to anybody in the chat, they're like a very, very, very old proto-punk band, super ahead of the curve when it comes to glam and all that stuff. I mean, a lot of you guys are familiar with like 80s metal and hair metal and bands like Kiss, where, you've got the makeup going and the big hair and so on and so forth. And, New York Dolls in New York City, like back in the 70s, at the time that they were doing what they were doing, like, a lot of people just thought they dressed like girls or whatever, and that was just sort of like, again, like weird and strange and like cutting edge for the time. And they had some, like, again, just like old, great proto-punk shit. I know, because a lot of their old stuff just sounds like punk music the way that it would just a few years down the road. They were ahead of the curve on a lot of stuff, musically and sonically, and, also in terms of just like the way they dressed and presented themselves. Because, as I was saying with Devo earlier, a lot of the most classic and influential rock artists out there, a lot of what they're doing is pageantry, and it's, presenting a persona, presenting a character, like, kind of reinventing yourself in a way. I mean, that's what David Bowie was all about, certainly. A lot of other rock artists and pop artists too, for that matter. But the New York Dolls were definitely a band that I had to think for a while about whether or not I'm like actually, going to go with that. I was thinking, New York Dolls, Devo, Jay-Z, Fela Kuti, and then I just ended up going with Devo.
Yeah, it was a tough list. The fifth pick was definitely the hardest when you get down to it.
So just to kind of summate once again, what were your 5 picks? You went Jay-Z.
My 5 pick:
Foo Fighters.
Jay-Z, Foo Fighters, Mary J. Blige, LL Cool J. And is that 5 right there? Yeah, I think that's 5. Jay-Z, LL Cool J, Mary J. Blige, Foo Fighters, and wait,
you're missing one? You have one more left?
I think so. How is that possible?
Well, if you got one more left, then pick it now.
I guess I would put Tina up there.
All right, well, I'm going to throw mine in here right now. I'm going to grab Iron Maiden, Kate Bush, Tina Turner. There we go. Devo. 1, 2, 3, 4. And no, I didn't do Foo Fighters. There they are. Rage Against the Machine. There we go. Submit. Count my vote. Count that fucking vote.
Have to sign into my
Google.
See
the current standings. Whoa! What you can't see this on screen right now, but when I saw this a week ago, Tina Turner was the number 1, and Tina Turner is number 2 now. She's still like far and away number 2. I don't think anybody's taken that number 2 spot away from her. But right now, number 1 is Fela Kuti, which is I don't know, maybe his people like sent it out online and were like, get this up on the Fela Kuti Facebook or something. I don't know. But like, that's actually pretty kick-ass. I mean, right now it looks like the top 5 are Iron Maiden, Carole King, Foo Fighters, Tina Turner, Fela Kuti, which I think are good picks. I mean, I'm happy to see Maiden in there. Again, Foo Fighters were predictable. Yeah. Tina Turner, I'm glad that people are fucking with that. But I'm surprised to see Fela Kuti up so high, because last week when I checked, he was like almost on the bottom rung. I was like, man, people don't know who the fuck Fela Kuti is. But I'm glad that the votes have come through for Fela Kuti. That's incredible. As far as the others who are down below, I mean, maybe over the course of the next week, somebody could overtake Carole King, maybe even Iron Maiden. The votes seem really close. But if it's going to be anybody, it looks like it's going to be Dion, the Go-Go's, or Rage Against the Machine. Damn, it looks like Kate Bush has stayed has stayed on the bottom rung right now. Kate Bush and New York Dolls are fighting it out right now for the last spot. And it looks like there's not even 1 million votes on this yet. So a lot of time to vote still. So this will be announced. I thought it was going to be announced in April or something, or maybe a little bit later. Don't quote me on that, but there's still plenty of time to get a vote in. So
and you can vote once a day.
Oh, you can vote once a day.
Reset.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Reset.
Well, vote once a day, re-vote, I guess, if this is something you're passionate about. Someone in chat says, we must fix this. I think there are a lot of passionate Kate Bush fans in chat who are going to fight her to the top now. I think it said April 30th. It says today through April 30th. So you have till April 30th to re-vote Kate Bush.
Every day until April 30th.
Just wake up in the morning, 30th. Cup of coffee, vote for Kate Bush, and that's your routine now until the end of April.
You open up Firefox. The first thing is the cash
because you've made it your homepage.
Exactly.
Homepage now. All right. This has been fun. Thank you very much for coming through and talking this with me. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for watching this clip on TND Streams. To see more, subscribe to the channel and also click on the video link next to my head. Also, make sure to check out our other YouTube channels linked down below to see everything else we do week to week. And yeah, that's it. Anthony Fantano, forever.